Basically ended up being the way I got my job because I broke those and broke my nose, my cheek and my eye socket. Man, I love that stuff. I'm a storyteller. That's really what I love doing. But it could be easy to ruin a reputation of a brand, by, I don't know.
All right, we're back with another MBUK podcast. I'm Tom Marvin, joined as always by Rob Weaver. How you doing, Rob?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
All right. Now, joining us in this studio today is, if you've consumed any mountain bike media over the past 25 years, I'm sure you will have come across Andrew Dodd, aka Doddy, currently of Mondraker, but previously, of course, from MBUK, and a few other bits in the middle, but we don't talk about them too much. But welcome to the podcast, Doddy. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
this is unexpected. Good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys must go back the thick end of 20 odd years. Yeah. So I'm anticipating just sitting here and listening to stories for the next hour and a bit. So there's a lot of history going on. But yeah, obviously you were, I guess you started with MBUK back in, I started reading MBUK in like 2001, maybe 2000. That's when you started. So yeah, you've been a part of my MBUK life forever. It's pretty cool.
What you see is what you get. I'm just a super fan.
Yeah.
So nothing's changed really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up reading a mag. It was my dad's friend that he played badminton with that gave me a carry bag for the mags. Backdated to number one, which I still have.
Yeah.
And then, I was hooked and I was like, I'm going to work there at some point.
Yeah.
Eventually got work experience after, I already now know how the company worked internally, like sending letters. Keep going, eventually you get one. And I was offered work experience in 99. Did that, and unlike, I guess, a lot of others at the time that were just like, I don't know, rabbit in the headlights, I came in, I was building wheels and doing more useful stuff, and then kind of got chummy with Paul Smith. He was reviews head at the time, and that for me was weird.
Yeah.
Because anything Paul wrote to me was gospel, and he gave me some bits to test, including a set of Stratos FR4 forks, and that basically ended up being the way I got my job because I broke those. Okay. And broke my nose, my cheek and my eye socket.
My God.
And then wrote a letter about looking like John Merrick, and they seemed to find it funny.
Yeah.
They said, you should apply for the show, so I did.
Right, and what did he start as then? Was it just general dog's body? Were you a tech
ed assistant, exactly that.
Right.
Making the tea, sorting the slides out, because it was that long ago.
Yeah.
It was slides, making sure they weren't reversed and stuff. Mm-hmm. She'd always have someone in scanning that would scan something the wrong way. You'd have the writing backwards and drivetrain on the left.
Yeah.
And bit by bit doing writing.
Yeah.
But something really early on that was very cool was Smith was like, you're not reviewing anything. He was like, you're going to ride these 4 bikes this week, and then tell me about them. Then next week, these 4 bikes. And it was, I can't remember, it was ages until he let me write anything. But in hindsight, it's like, that's a really good thing.
That's such a great way to start doing anything, I think. Yeah.
There's less time in today's society to do that, but back then, because there was a print deadline. That was it.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else.
Yeah.
So, internet was just starting, which just seems wild.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what your first sort of proper feature was?
It was probably the first road trip I did. So I think I'd been at the mag maybe a month, something like that. Tim Manley, the editor, he rang me up and he's like, what are you doing next week? In the way that he does.
It's very good, yeah.
And I was like, well, I work for you, so I'm doing whatever you tell me to. He's like, Steve Gilson, come pick her up tomorrow. Pack lots of things for cold weather. And that's about all he told me. So Steve Gill came and picked me up in the massive Nissan Patrol thing we had. And then we went to, I'm trying to think where we went first, but we picked up Steve Bear and then Martin Ashton, Martin Hawes. And you've got to bear in mind that as a super fan, it's like the first proper assignment. And then Rob Warner. Right?
My Lord.
And then we drove to Annecy. And I kid you not, if Horsey sees this, he'll remember because him and Martin were just like drilling me for like 17 hours. Basically, and to the point I couldn't laugh anymore. And then by the end of it, they're like, yeah, he's all right, actually. And it was amazing. So, got to Pete Tompkins' place, rode bikes in the snow, hung out with Pete for a few days, and then drove south all the way down to Barcelona we saw David Vasquez, rode with him, Oscar Saez, rode with him, and then went to Oppai's house as well.
No way.
And then Geordie Terrace, who's the motorcycle. I wasn't aware of him at the time. My knowledge of trials was like Dougie Lampkin. Yeah, but Geordie Terrace is like the king. And we went to his house, and it was the only time still I'd ever seen Martin Ashton with nothing to say. He was totally just like, this is like Geordie Terrace's house.
No way.
Yeah, and I made a video from it back then. And it was like, I don't even think it was DV cameras on those early ones. It might have been full-size cassette going in.
Nice.
Like, it was pretty ropey what it was. And I remember just videoing everything, thinking it should be filmed.
Yeah.
There wasn't an assignment to do it, and then we ended up putting it out as a cover mount.
Huh.
And I don't have a
remember
copy
that.
of it, and I'd still like to see it again. There's bits and pieces that people have uploaded on YouTube, but someone somewhere will have the master. It'd be pretty cool to drag
maybe
it
it's
out.
somewhere. Maybe it's somewhere here.
It could be.
Who knows?
Worth digging out.
Because it was pretty cool. I think it was literally called Barcelona are back, or
Right.
something
That's
as
so
creative
cool.
as that.
That's a pretty sort of ballsy way to start your career with
Yeah.
MBUK.
Yeah, and then as you know well how the mag works, any trip you went on like that with other riders, every single shoot is a feature, and then a cover features and stuff. So we were gone for like 2 weeks and probably had 5 or 6 covers, I reckon, maybe more out of it, and then major features plus the road trip features and the video and all the stuff for hype at the beginning of the magazine. And
Yeah.
God, it feels weird even just saying hype.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd obviously done your work experience there, but you said you were building wheels and stuff like that when you just did that. So let's go right back. How did you even get into not necessarily man bikes, because you said about the bag of magazines?
Yeah.
But what were you doing before you did your work experience then?
I was working a number of things, including a local bike shop.
Okay.
So the whole bikes thing is in the family blood. Like my dad and his brother rode everywhere, and they used to ride Holdsworths and I forget other brands, but they used to ride to Cortina in Italy and back for their summer holiday sort of thing. And when they first started doing it, their bikes had flip-flop gearing, so a climber and a descender.
Yeah.
And I was like, I still can't get my head around it that they'd gone that far.
That's
On
mad.
those old bikes,
Yeah.
but that's what they did. And they used to drop their bags off in the post office of a town, and they'd ride to the next town, and the postman would basically deliver the bags to the next post office, and stay in hostel, and then pick their way along through Europe. And basically used to do it every summer,
That's mad.
and it was kind of just being around bikes was just a thing. Obviously, my dad didn't ride much as when I was a kid, but there's always the stories and
Yeah.
stuff, and it was pretty evident. Like any kid, when you get on a bike, it's like a sense of freedom in that.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of time, and then there was a wood literally 2 minutes from where I grew up, full of old bomb holes and a chalk mine.
Yep.
So it was literally every waking minute was down there.
Nice.
If I was at home, there was a problem. This is like pre-computer game era. I had an Amstrad, I don't know, CPC 64 or something. I can't remember. I had a cassette player on it.
Yeah.
And to load a game, you have to load it and go out for a ride.
Yeah.
Basically come back and it might have loaded. So there was no such thing as any other entertainment. You just went and did it yourself. Yeah, so bikes from the beginning. Got a job in the local bike shop. I think I did work experience there at school.
Yeah.
And I was like a Saturday boy and maybe did like some evening work and stuff after schools. Did their mail order. Malcolm Fryer, he's still there, which I can't believe. Which is
That's crazy.
amazing that it's still going after all these years. Total independent shop.
Yeah.
He taught me everything. Like,
Okay. In terms of
amazing.
mechanicking and everything.
Yeah. Like, in my mind, he didn't have any patience at all when I was a kid there, but actually, he had all the patience in the world. When you sit back and think about these things, he's amazing. So yeah, super cool. And he taught me all the old school ways of this is how you fix like a tachoed wheel when you're in the middle of nowhere. Basically, smack the crap.
That's
out
really
of
cool.
it.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Did he sort of plant that? Because you've done a lot of tech stuff over your career. Did he sort of plant that seed for it then, or?
Don't know. I think it was more a case of I'd get in trouble if I broke something, so I learned pretty quickly to like at least try and mask it. and
that's what became a ton of features, right?
pretty much. Yeah. And I don't know, just tinkering with stuff. It's always been a thing.
Okay.
More often than not, it was broken, so you had to fix it. But sometimes just, how does that work?
So I guess back then as well, we used to break a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you must have done your fair share in the workshop.
Yeah, I could say that.
So obviously, okay, let's go back to working at the mag. You did that first road trip. I'm sure you have endless stories. Is there any that stand out? Other trips? Because obviously you would have been going away with a team back when we had a team.
Done with the team, yeah. And then, of course, when G and Dan Afton first came on the scene. So Rachel at this point was just like the little sister. She wasn't even part of the equation. And it was Dan, really, that was leader. And G was just like the next mad kid, basically. The first trip they came in was when I first started and I wasn't on that trip.
Yeah.
And G started a trend of what he did on every single trip every year. Nailed himself. Because those trips back then, it was to get a cover. And a cover on a magazine, I mean, it might sound weird to anyone today with like podcasts and video content. It's just so much media everywhere. But to get a cover, it's like such a prestigious thing.
Yeah.
You know what it's like going to Smith's and see yourself on a front cover of a magazine.
I just got the Cycling Plus cover this month, and like
I bet it still feels amazing.
Yeah,
man.
Probably even more so now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the riders all knew there was a battle. There might be 10 riders, and there might only be like 5 or 6 covers.
Yeah.
So they would all, if there was a feature, like jump, step up, whatever, he was like, right, it's on.
Oh my God.
And then with someone like G, who it now makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
After
now
getting
you
to
know,
him
but
over the years, literally red rag to ball, and every time he used to nail himself. In search of trying to do something good and progressive. I mean, there was a trip I did with Chris Smith, Jim Davidge, Danny Holroyd, I think was on it, Trials rider from Trials Kings, Dave Wardell was on it, a few others, can't remember, but G was on it. And it was in the era where Rampage was just becoming a thing, so I guess maybe 2003 or something. And we found this quarry, and I saw this sort of big drop onto a bank, and I was like, that looks just like the sort of thing you see in Rampage. And literally, as I'm saying that, he's like already scaling it, and you're like, oh, this is... This was long before health and safety was a thing.
Yeah.
So
No
Tim
risk
Manley would
assessment.
basically give me a wad of cash and traveller's checks as well, if you remember them.
Yeah.
And be like, make sure everyone's fed and watered and come back. that was it. That was the brief. And then Steve Bear would basically be the team dad for the week.
Yeah, on-site
because he
dad.
had to look after everyone,
Yeah.
myself included, because I'd get carried away in excitement with all the stuff going on. Yeah, and so we cleared out all the landing, everyone together, and like I think Bullhead was just like, "You're crazy, G. I thought you'd play that sort of thing." And we moved everything except one rock, and there's one rock we couldn't move. It must have been like an iceberg. Like,
my
it was
God.
just like it wasn't coming out, and we basically it was more or less like, whatever you do, don't go left, and everything will be all right, sort of thing. And then G goes off, instead of just like plopping off this cliff, he goes off this thing like race style, like, and instantly you're just like, oh, this is bad. And of course, that's the only thing to hit, and he hits that with his head.
God. Oh,
And
God.
he was wearing, I don't know the model, probably like a Fox Flight helmet, maybe,
Yeah.
something like that from that era.
Yeah.
And all I remember was he was on his hands and knees, and he was winded clearly, but it looked like it could have been worse. And he was kind of just doing that thing where you just check yourself. And he took his helmet off, threw it on the floor. And I went and looked at his helmet, and he had a hole in the back. You could stick your thumb in it. And I was like, but the sort of the concerned bit of a young naive person was like, oh God, like that could have been it.
Yeah.
And then what I found out, he's like, yeah, that's all right. Don't worry about it. So can't do that again though, so I've got another helmet with me.
That's not such a bad thing, right? Yeah. Oh my
so,
God.
Yeah, it was kind of a string of things like that, really.
Wow. And what about office shenanigans? Have you broken your record for chicken nuggets yet?
No.
Was it 51?
No, it wasn't as many as that.
it
It was
50?
bigger. I think it was like 37.
It's 37. And then you took your trousers off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got the
You had to sit there. You got
chicken
really,
nugget sweats.
Yeah. I just remember sitting there, and Rosie, who was the deputy editor, she's like, what's happening here? And I'm like, oh yeah, Doddy's eating loads of nuggets, he's sweating. So he took his trousers off.
I mean, there's I've almost forgotten. There's far too much stuff that we can't
Yeah.
talk about, and there's
I'm
stuff.
sure Jimmer's name maybe comes up
Oh yeah.
occasionally.
Oh,
I
God,
mean, if
yeah.
you say chili sauce and Jimmer, yeah, like.
The donuts, do you remember injecting the donuts?
Oh yeah. The donuts and every sort of phone handle, doorknob, anything possible with chili sauce.
There was chili sauce in someone's chamois.
Yeah, I did that to Jimmer.
And
And
Lorette?
Justin Lorette, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I caught Justin having to wash his in the sink.
You injected the donuts though, and Justin being Justin, who
He
loves
hopped it straight in.
loves free food. Yeah, but the thing is,
But this was like, it wasn't even Dave's Insanity sauce. This was like a ridiculous one as well. It had like a pipette.
yeah, I remember it's so funny. It was good. Yeah.
Too many of those things. Yeah,
There's a lot-
Fraser Barsby from 24/7.
Yeah.
We got him pretty bad all over his briefcase handle, and he kept like rubbing his eyes, making it worse. And
Savage.
mackerel in the phone receivers.
Yeah.
It was office hijinks.
Yeah.
That's what happened all the time.
Jim
I
on
built some
a
of my
mini
best
bike.
bikes at my desk instead of even going to the workshop.
Well, I was saying to the guys that when we moved here, when we got bought first, do you remember we went to, because you were still working with us, and there was a no
other
bikes.
building.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
no bike rule.
Yeah.
I think you and I were both like,
How can I build a bike?
how do we work on our bikes? I think both our desks had holes where we'd be using to like smash stuff instead of we didn't have any tools.
I've
So
got a
we-
handset press, bit of wood. Yeah.
oil all over the floor, and it was like, yeah, you guys can't do that anymore.
I think I was partitioned off from MBUK when I started because I was in the tech hub from the off. Right?
Yeah.
Sat next to a couple of colleagues, and I did a lot of road when I started.
So you're on the responsible side of things.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. But you'd look across, and like, I think it sort of took a few months before I had the courage to sort of like, right, Doddy, sort of scurry off, sort of thing. But there's always like noises coming from like you and Jimmer and all that sort of lot down on the mag, and I was like, oh, I want to be part of that.
Do you know, honestly, it was still like sort of best husband life by far.
It was so fun, wasn't
it? It was. I tell some of the stories. I mean, when I was at GMBN, I tell some of those stories to some of the staff there, and they can't really get their head around. They're like, "What? You used to go into work through the window?" Like this old Palace Yard days. It was like, it's so hot, and then we broke the fans off the wall and put them under our desks. And we'd sit in our pants on our desk with the fans, keeping us cool. Like, if you felt that sort of heat, you'd do it as well. We were just smart.
Sure.
And like my desk was like a barricade of stuff. So if you went out and had a few beers the night before, you could just.
All you needed to do was just look to see if in the morning there's a pot noodle on there, and you knew that was like the measure of the night before.
Yeah.
If there's a pot noodle on there, you're like, oh God, he's going to be hanging.
Yeah, that's still the staple. It's the only thing that works.
The straight go-to.
Over the years, you must have had like obviously a lot of features in MBUK, and we talked about a few. We must have had quite a few covers as well.
Yeah.
Any in particular that sort of stand out?
Oh God, so many. I mean, the super fun one. I noticed. I looked through mags the other day. Batcave Challenge.
Okay.
First time we did it. It was gold. It was gold. It was so good.
I was freelance. I turned up on the second day, and you were jumping that big step up in the woods that we probably shouldn't name.
And Boxwoods probably.
Yeah, and Collins had.
He had his disc wheel on his bike.
Had his disc wheel, but he'd made there was no rear shock. He'd used an inner tube tied around it.
Right.
That was the shock absorber.
Yeah, and Rick was there at the time.
Yeah,
Rick would have been cutting a little clip of Jürgen Beneke. That's what he runs, his spring rate.
That's got to be somewhere, though, because he filmed all of that.
That's on, well, it was on Bike Radar YouTube channel. Like, Matt Cole put it on there. Like, the resolution is literally a potato can. It's awful.
But it might be on there.
Mm.
But that was funny.
But even the one before that was with Mike Davis.
Okay.
That was like the second time.
Okay.
Yeah, in the original one. But it was real. It was like,
yeah.
we're going in and build some stuff.
So this is a Batcave challenge. What contextually to those who?
Okay, so the Batcave was the old. I mean, it didn't have any like comical pivoting bushes or anything, but it was the old workshop. So a lock up underneath. It was, I don't know. There's hundreds of bikes in there from all the publications, and then a workshop on the top. And that workshop was famous for having more stuff than bikes in there.
Right.
Literally, as we proved, we built several bikes just by rummaging through stuff. And as a result, someone was like, we should do a scrap heap challenge. We're like, okay, let's do it.
So you featurised that, and there was a cover out of it, and
I don't know if that one was a cover actually. Maybe the second one was. I kind of forget in all of it. But it was just mega, and that's exactly where MBUK was at the time. Because I think it's fair to say that in a time when the sport didn't really have a direction, chose entertainment.
Yeah,
which is smart. It made it a fun thing to be part of.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about like the tech on the bikes or the racing. It was like,
I guess this is the thing, back then, like you said, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't podcasts, Instagram, all that sort of stuff, and the mountain bike media at the time was MBUK and Dirt, MBR as well, and a few other things, but the sort of the cultural side of mountain biking seemed to be, magazine stuff. Yeah. You had racing on one side, you had the magazine on the other, and we had Ollie Wilkins on last week on the podcast. And he's another sort of person like yourself who's kind of made a name for themselves on a big scale who hasn't done it via racing. Yeah. Like you were there at the right time, in the right places, and have created a career out of just being you. And that must be sort of quite a nice thing to have achieved.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
It's strange, and I don't really know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing bikes, but it's bikes. Either way, forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the most eye-opening things for me. So when I was freelance, Doddy and I went up and we did the opening of what was the Dolby?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Of course, yeah. The Wrecking Crew days.
Yeah. So Petey was there, and I remember more people coming up to ask for Doddy's signature than Steve Pete's. It was wild.
I mean, the magazine thing is like, it's kind of like daytime TV presenter, isn't it? It's like the closest you're going to get to a celebrity is Eamon Holmes or whoever, you know. So I get how that model worked, and that was always Tim's idea to Tim Manley, that is the founder. It was always his idea to not build us up into these people, but we were the closest that most of the readers are ever going to get to meeting those people, unless you're at a race or something.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's totally different in the way things work today. But yeah, I mean, it's bizarre. Like, one of the last videos I got round to making was I rode that prototype, like Gary Fisher 1975 clunker, and all the research and stuff I had to do to put that video together, having a call with Gary Fisher, I was like, this is just like, I can't even fathom how strange this is. My entire life has been following this whole journey, seeing mountain biking happen to start with, and seeing all these new products innovating that, and now I'm literally having voice calls with and video calls with the founding fathers. Speaking of Joe Breeze and Charlie Kelly and Scott Nicol and Gary Fisher, and then going ride on those bikes. And that bike, showed him the bike on camera. He's like, holy shit, that's the one I built in 1974. And you're like, it's just wild.
That's mad.
To think that I'm literally like, I'm a fan of the old stuff. Yeah. I'm under no illusion. I know it's old tat, but it's our old tat. You know, it's we've been doing it long enough now that we have got a bit of history behind it.
Yeah.
Because mountain biking, I think it's different to many sports in the fact that it's a pastime, it's a mode of transport, it's a hobby, and it's a sport that you can race. So it ticks several things. It's not just like a pair of running shoes to go running. Like, it's a number of different things, and that's why it's so cool. Yeah. And I've also loved the fact it can borrow from so much. Unlike road, where it can't necessarily do that, we can borrow from road, we can borrow from moto, we can borrow from snow sports and, you know, ideas and concepts. Yeah. I think that's why it's grown so quickly, really.
Do you look back at sort of your earlier days of being in mountain bike media, and how would you compare it to the way it is now? It's quite a different thing. Was it better back then? Maybe slightly more innocent and easy, or is it?
I don't know. I have thought about this quite a lot, because obviously with the freedom you have today with all the different social channels, anyone can go and film something or take a photo and get it seen by people. When it was all just print publishing, you know, it was a privileged position to be in, working for any publishing house, whatever that topic is, because you're seeing now, it's quite a responsible place to be, really, because you're, you know, like using bike reviews as a thing, you know, there was no qualification as such to be a bike reviewer. No. I mean, luckily I had Paul Smith as a steering person that was a cynic, really, so it was like the right tone. But it could be easy to ruin the reputation of a brand, you know, by, I don't like that. It's like, well, as we know, it's not about what you like. It's about delivering a factual piece of content. And now it's very different. So there was a lot of responsibility of magazines in hiring the right staff and the attitude and the way you do it, where that's not always the case now. Of course, under media houses, it will be. But, you know, it's the beauty of freedom, but also comes with that. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there that's probably not ideal. You know, if you were looking for buying advice, for example, you know, I would still look at like media houses, people that actually do this for a living.
Is it an industry that if you weren't in it and you were sort of your formative years, you would want to try and still get into?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that or music.
Okay.
But bikes is something I literally can't live without. Yeah. You know, sometimes even like looking at a bike. Yeah. Which, to people that don't ride bikes, you won't get it. I think you guys will get it.
Get it, yeah.
They're quite easy just having coffee and like, it's a good looking bike.
You must have done some cool press trips. And I think, like Tom said, we chatted to Ollie last week, and we were sort of covering off how things have changed over the years. But those early years must have been pretty special.
Yeah, so press trips in the early days, it was very cool to be invited on a press trip by any company. But a press trip, there definitely was a mentality from the manufacturer's perspective of like, oh, what Trek have been here, have they? Well, we're going to do this then. We're going to have an extra day and we're going to have a helicopter as well. And some of those trips were wild. I mean, I did the Marzocchi presentation every year. I don't know when I started, but one of the first ones was Whistler. And that was before Whistler was a thing that we'd really heard of.
Okay.
Wasn't aware. I turned out, I don't even think I had knee pads. I had a Gyro Zen helmet. Which Zen helmet.
Yeah.
Pair of Globe trainers, so I didn't even take ride shoes. Turned up and see all the ski lifts, and it was like, might not be the best outfit here. And I bought some like just BMX knee pads in one of the shops there, and did the press trip, me riding. I didn't really know how to gauge myself on the level of trails, so I think I rode like Beeline or something. I was like, oh, that was pretty rubbish. I can want something more.
Yeah.
And Wade Simmons and Brett Tippie were on this launch, and they were like, "You're that guy from the UK, come ride with us." And I was like, "Okay, this is cool." And rode down A-line.
Yeah.
And Wade was like, "Do you know how to jump?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Cool, right, follow him. I'll be behind you." And rode everything on A-line first time behind Tippie. And if you went to Whistler in the earlier days, there was a section linking two parts where it's just a flat out straight blast with a right hand catch berm at the bottom. I remember going down there and Tippie's like, "Out the way!" Like shouting, literally people are bobbling off to the side, and I'm like, I don't think I've been this fast on a bike.
Oh my god!
Literally, and I've got Wade behind me. He's just like, "Get off those brakes!" And it's just ridiculous. And so basically, after that press trip, every time I never rode with journalists ever again. I just started riding with all the pros because whether it's Marzocchi or RockShox or Shimano, whoever, they would have their brand ambassadors and their athletes there, and that taught me. I was like, I should be riding with other people because otherwise you get caught in a trap of people saying, "Oh, I don't know about this product." And it's like, just ride with the pros.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
So I'm by no means the best rider, but I'm comfortable in any situation really.
Yeah.
And that's because of just spending years of going on those trips and riding with those people. Like another Marzocchi one was in Cortina, ironically, and riding down a bobsleigh run with Thomas Van Dram. And it's just like, well,
that's so random, though.
Yeah.
You're having a bobsleigh run.
Yeah. I mean, it was concrete. Like, obviously, it wasn't snow.
Yeah, but
down,
still.
it was all graffitied.
Yeah.
And you're going flat out. And what I didn't realise is gaps between the concrete. It's quite a lot bigger than you think.
Really?
So you rim it every time. Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. But yeah, they're super cool.
That's mad, isn't it?
And I don't know, like just so many people. I think probably the three best trips did. Two of them both Trek, ironically.
Okay.
One was Moab.
Yeah.
Which I'd wanted to tick Moab off forever. And they were like, "We're launching 2 bikes in Moab." And it was like, amazing. So went over there and it dawned on me just how big Trek was as a company. So I don't know, it must have been 40 journalists, maybe 50. Like it was a huge press trip. And we arrived so early that whoever the tour company was that they'd employed to help us, they were like, "We're going to take you out in Hummers for some driving and stuff because we've got to wait a few days for like everyone to arrive and be here." Yeah, so we went out on tours in Humvees basically on the slick rock and stuff. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
That's really cool.
And then we did a day riding on, it would have been Remedy and Carbon Remedy. Just riding, I think we rode Massaback and Poison Spider Mesa and I can't remember, but definitely those ones. And then the next day was, I'm going to say Slash, could have been Slash.
Okay.
It was a bigger travel bike.
Yeah.
Alloy. And we rode whole enchilada on that. And it was like, as far as a press trip goes with riding, it's like, it's not
Don't get better.
That trail is still my all-time.
Yeah?
I've been lucky enough to be to some incredible places, but because it's so different to anything I ever get a chance to ride.
Yeah.
And you've got all zones. You're high alpine to start with, and then you come down through like the aspen trees and then through the meadows and then down to the desert floor where you've got the rocks and the canyons. And it just changes you through different zones.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't, don't know where to go and ride there if you've not. It's incredible. And the other trip was also a Trek trip, the previous one when they first launched the Carbon Remedy, and that was the Copper Canyon in Mexico.
Oh yeah, okay.
Even getting to that was wild. So I think we had to fly, it was Gatwick to Dallas, Dallas to Mexico City to Chihuahua. So the plane's getting smaller and smaller, and then got on a bus, like a sort of yellow school bus type thing, and then we had to drive for ages into whatever the town was called, I can't remember. And they set us up and we had these little wooden shacks with a big fire out the front. And in the evening, we basically have like barbecued food and basically stand by the fire and then everyone back to their shacks.
Nice.
And the riding was incredible. And it was pretty high up there. And Sterling Lawrence did the photos.
Nice.
And then he had, on the last evening, everyone had a few beers and he did a big slideshow of all his photos. There's obviously no video. It was all just
yeah.
photo. And because it was Sterling, it was like this
Incredible, yeah.
Yeah, and the music, Buena Vista Social Club, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is ridiculous." Yeah,
Wow.
so that's like etched in my mind. And then in more recent, not that recent, probably around 2014, one of my last trips I did with MBUK was for the giant rain. I guess it would have been 27.5 inch. It was when they were one of the first companies messing around with offset and forks on the bike, and that bike was, although had to ride a large rather than the XL, but it was like a good bike. And that trip was amazing. We went to Pemberton.
Yes.
And did heli drop riding up there.
Very cool.
Yeah, and the pilot we had, I mean, I remember this forever. So he's like an old Vietnam veteran, and he's like, "Who's been in a helicopter here?" And I had on some other trips, but there's a couple that hadn't. And he was like, "Do you want the fun ride? Do you want the direct ride? Do you want the scenic ride?" And they're like, "What's the fastest?" And he goes, "Okay." And he basically just took off backwards instead. Like, so everyone's getting ready for like a thing. He took straight off. And he was like, that's a dust off. And he was doing all these crazy things. And he flew up, literally the skids hitting the tops of the trees, going up the mountain. It was like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest thing ever.
That's insane.
And we had like a strict format. When we got out of the helicopter to the top, you had to form like an arrow shape with the lead person at the front, and you'd have to touch him on the shoulder basically to say that you're safe and you're ready.
Yeah.
And then he would give a mark to the pilot, and the pilot would take off. And he put us down literally on the edge of a cliff. Like, it's weird. I found some of these pictures the other day.
Right.
It's as mad as I'm saying it is. And he was like, "I'll show you something quite cool." So we're all out. We do the shoulder tappy thing, and he goes, "Cool," and just goes, and just drops off the side of the cliff.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was just
That's wild.
Bonkers, absolutely bonkers. Yeah, super cool. And then the riding obviously was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, but
it was pretty much like an 8-hour trip down a mountain,
all
through all different zones, and we stopped for like a mountain swim, and I think someone from Giant had put like a few carry bags of beers, basically tied a knot in and put a rock in them in the water. It was ice cold up there.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to go for a swim and realise how cold it is. They're like, "Oh, just
a bit."
Yeah, but that was amazing. And then I stayed on. I got a lift back to Whistler from Giant, and I stayed for a week in Whistler and just rode, borrowed a downer bike, and I was like, "Well, this is ridiculous."
That sounds good.
Yeah. So super fortunate for some of those trips.
Yeah.
Some of the places and stuff. But you know what it's like when you travel with this kind of job, you tend to see a lot of places, but you don't see much of them.
Yeah.
Whistle stop tour.
Yeah, in and out.
And any opportunity to bolt on a bit of time.
Yeah, makes sense.
It didn't happen that often, but it was like,
nice.
Yeah, super good.
So you stuck with the mag for, is it 13, 14 years?
14 and a half years.
14 and a half years.
I think, was it 13 and a half? I forget now. Let's just say 14, average.
Yeah, okay. And then you decided to move on. What prompted that?
I think just because I've been there so long, and at the end of the time, he wasn't going anywhere, and there wasn't really anything I could do, and I feel like I'd done everything times 2.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and it was weird. I remember thinking, I don't really want to go, but I need to kind of go and do something else to challenge myself a bit more in a different way. And a drunken conversation with Darren Mabbott, who's the owner of Silverfish, long-term industry friend of mine. I hadn't realised that he'd ended up buying an old website called Factory Jackson off another guy. And he was like, "Oh, I've had this for ages." He goes, "Do you want to run it for me?" And I was like, "Let's talk about it tomorrow." He goes, "Let's talk about it now. Get to sign a bit of paper." I was like, "What?" And literally, it went, a few beers in the bar at the Core Bike Show.
Yeah.
And he basically offered me a job.
Nice.
And his whole plan is really forward thinking, actually, was to have a website that he's like, "I want good content on there, I want good bikes." He goes, "But if you're going to put one of my bikes on there, if you're going to put Yeti on there, you've got to have a Santa Cruz on there as well. You've got to have an Intense on there."
Keep it
he was
balanced.
like, because he believes in the bike industry.
Yeah.
And and that was the remit. He goes, "You can ride anyone's bikes as long as you've got one of my bikes as well." That was it. And he goes, "I don't want to know what you do, just get on with it." And it was amazing because I'd never had that sense of freedom before. And then also I was like, "Oh yeah," so obviously I used to take quite a few pictures on MBUK, but never had my own gear because the last time I owned a camera was an SLR before digital, and I was like, I couldn't afford one of those. And I was like, "Oh right, okay, I better start fresh again." So bought a new DSLR, and
because you are rather handy with the photography.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And so I got basically immersed myself all over again, and then sort of retaught myself photography, and then did a load of courses for SEO and stuff, and then suddenly I was the editor, the uploader, the photographer, and started doing some video bits and pieces. yeah, and I mean, it wasn't very long. It's like 2 years.
But it's quite a change of pace. You
My
know, we
God,
went from, you know, one deadline a month every 4 weeks, and then you were responsible for everything. And that constant churn.
Yeah. Which was brilliant because I need to be busy to function well. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be so busy it's a problem, but like I think everyone works well with a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
And the fact is, I mean, this year has been bonkers for me, but I've come back off a working phase where it's more or less 6 or 7 months. I think I probably did 25 flights, just crazy amount of travel for me in a compressed time. And I've come back and there's been like a few weeks of breathing space, and I'm like, I need literally, point me in the right direction, and it's done.
Yeah.
But if I can free float a bit, it's not good. So Factory Jackson was amazing for me, and to have the trust from someone straight out with no real direction, he's like, do this. It's like, and I'd ring him up and I'd be like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, do it.
What was it like not having done? Because you spent 14 years working under an editor, to suddenly being the person in charge of the whole ecosystem of a new thing. Like, I would find that challenging. Like, that's quite a scary prospect.
Well, at the time, so I think it's fair to say I've always been, if I learn something, I want to teach someone what I've learned. Like, I've always just had that thing. And because social media was starting to be a major thing back then, I could really see what, like, print magazines weren't doing socially, and I was like, well, this is obvious. So do loads of technical related content, put it on Instagram, make them good quality photos, give a load of information that no one else is, and just smash it. And I can't remember what Instagram followers it got up to now, 10 or 15,000 or something, from nothing in inside of 2 years, in a time when Instagram wasn't really doing much. I went pretty good, and I started doing a few video things, but it wasn't really a sort of a desire for it at the time. It wasn't really a thing. YouTube obviously existed, but brands weren't just throwing loads of stuff on there.
Because we did a tiny bit on Bike Radar a long time ago, didn't we? And there was always, between you, Coley, and Rick, there was a bit more sort of impetus to try and get stuff to happen. I remember that.
I mean, so the first time podcasts were a thing, they were video. Don't you remember that video podcast back then? And I did the first MBUK one. It was the MBUK Doddcast.
Yeah.
I chucked it together with footage from one of those sunshine shoots, and I don't know how to upload it. Matt Cole uploaded it, and it's still on there today on the iTunes store, which I find bizarre. It's really weird. I mean, it's awful if you look back at it, but it's got all the classic things. It's got G. Afton smashing himself up. It's got Steve Pete in there. It's got the Don. But yeah, it's just bizarre. So that landscape changed very quickly, and people had to adapt to the whole digital thing.
But it felt like you were kind of almost ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. Because
it was easy because I don't have to answer to anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And something, you work in any company with any kind of structure, it needs a structure because you've got a lot of people to to make sure stuff gets done right. But also it kind of removes that freedom of choice sometimes. And Darren didn't mind. He was like, do it. If it works, do it. And every Thursday I went riding during the day, and I'd take as many people out as I could, and I'd be like, give them stuff to test as well, and go and take photos of them, go and ride bikes, and then just put it on social media. And the time when not many people were doing it, it worked really well, basically.
Wicked.
Yeah, and then it got to the point where it was starting to get traction, and I needed to start getting some budget to pay freelancers, because I was like, I can't do it anymore.
Wasn't sustainable.
I need help now. Yeah. And it got to that point, and then kind of another curveball happened, and then I stopped working there, which I did not see it coming. I did not.
Okay, so that offer for GMBN Tech.
Just before that. The bike channel stuff.
Of course, I forgot about that.
Actual TV job.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, this is weird because this is almost like moonlighting.
Right.
So I forget his name now, Filippo, I think, the guy that owns the channel in Italy. They've got an Italian channel that's very successful, and they're looking at doing a UK version, basically. So it sounded too good to be true, which we later found out it was. But, we've got a 24-hour television channel, free content on terrestrial TV. And you're like, what, everything to do with bikes? It was kind of like when Dave first happened, everyone's like, well, you're basically just going to put Top Gear all day. It's like, surely not. So same thing. It's like, we want to do a mountain bike show. Can you do it? And I was like, And he's like, we've got another presenter as well. Her name's Anna. And I was like, Anna who? Anna Glorinsky. I was like, oh yeah, I met her a few times. And I rang her up before saying yes and was like, what do you reckon? She's like, you'll be all right, come on, let's do it. So we did, but I asked Darren and he goes, yeah, as long as you can get some content while you're filming and put it on Factory Jackson. He goes, I'm sure you can get a few logos and t-shirts in places. And I was like, yep, done. So I used that to help me go to different places. And then Liam Murphy was the creator for it. And he would give me footage and stuff from it that I would then use on Factory Jackson as well. So it's pretty smart, all crafty. Made this little mini media empire thing.
Because that would have been like the first mountain bike show on TV since, God, like mid to late 90s?
Yeah, because there was like the RAV4 stuff way back, the 7
that would have been like
BBF
97,
stuff,
98, and then...
It's had little peaks here and there. But to have a weekly, or how often it was, show. Like
it was crazy.
30-minute TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nuts.
I forgot about that. Didn't they open an office in Bath as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nuts.
Nice.
And I mean, there were some internal problems, and it was all to do with the company, not to do with what projects are being worked on.
Sure.
And we ended up, basically, I was like, I'm not going to sign up for another year.
Okay.
It was just like, just didn't work out. And then I think it was a case of we all agreed, the three of us, to do it together. And when Liam didn't want to carry on, I was like, nah, this works. And it only works right now with other stuff in life if the three of us are literally doing it. So we'd have the worst arguments, but it was all because you wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, the worst arguments. And
I can't imagine Liam arguing.
oh my God.
I mean, we had some good nights out with Liam in Vegas, didn't we?
I have one or two.
Yeah, oh my God. But what a boy, yeah.
But that's also helped make him as well. You see what he's doing now.
Yeah, it's
BBC
incredible.
Sound stuff. It's incredible what he's gone on to do. But yeah, I mean, that was insane to be part of a terrestrial TV show. It's wild.
Do you feel like that was what helped pave the way for the next chapter in your career?
Yeah, I think so. But I think my work ethic was actually what I think that might have obviously helped with being able to film and broadcast and stuff. But I think something that Simon said to me later was, he goes, I saw your Eurobike. And he goes, I saw what you were putting up. And he goes, I watched all the other journalists coming around to get free coffees and that. And I saw you sat on the floor every day, like uploading and stuff. So the only way to do it was to, so even just doing captions on photos on WordPress or whatever it was doing it just takes forever. And it crashes and you lose stuff and you have to go again, resize the image, put a watermark on it. Just every process has a million parts. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I've become one of those people now that's up until midnight every single night just to make ends meet. But I still had that drive to do it. And that ultimately ended up with getting an offer with, I don't know where you want to go with this, but talking about GMBN as well. Yeah. So, I mean, that was bizarre. So a really good friend of mine, probably my closest friend, Tim, he works for Shift Active Media. And we go for a beer. Well, back then would have been weekly, but maybe monthly these days. And went to meet him for a beer after work. And that's when they were in the Monmouth Street office. And he wasn't ready. So I was just sat in reception, and Simon Weir, the founder, comes down and he goes, "Oh, waiting for Tim, are you? Oh, he's going to be a little while. Do you want to come up and have a look?" Yeah, cool. Have a little tour, chat to him, and then in a kind of roundabout way, he basically ended up offering me a job, and I was a bit like, "So come to meet my friend for a beer and walk out of it and been offered a job." Don't really know. And he's like, "Oh, we'll speak next week. Don't worry about it." And then this was when GCN had started, and GCN was probably the first of all the media to be straight on the daily content, doing what's nearly impossible to do. And you could tell he was going to do this with mountain bike stuff, and he started with GMBN, and then he wanted to launch a tech channel as well and other channels, and he was like, "Yeah, you're going to do that." And I was like, at this point, hadn't said yes, but I was like, I don't really know what's just happened.
For context, it's probably worth pointing out you go way back with Simon. So Simon Weir, who was instrumental when we were at Future.
Yeah, so he was the COO at Future Publishing. Yeah. And he put in the international licensing thing. I think that's fair to say one of the biggest things that he did. So he would travel to, I don't know, like say Russia, for example, and do a licensed Russian edition and Californian, and they would have localized content and maybe different cover stars, but the bulk of the content would be reproduced. Yeah, I mean, it's a really great concept. And I think a large point when Future was struggling a lot, that saved Future financially. And then I think it came to the point where he was going to be MD or CEO or whatever it was. If he didn't get it, he was like, right, I've done my bit now. I'm going to... And he did. So then he started Shift. And then the Google thing came up with GCN. And then that was via Google. But then GMBN was like, well, I'm going to have to do this now as well. And then again, and again, and again, and again.
Smart guy.
Yeah. And then it was funny because I just thought, like, this is... I said to my wife, Steph, I was like, this is weird because I'm super happy with Darren and just like everything was great, total trust, loving the bits anyway. And I've had this offer that just feels like, hold on, there's something new happening here this hasn't been done before. This is like a brand new thing. I thought it'd be stupid if I don't give it a go. And I remember trying to ring Darren. He was on holiday. I think he's in Barbados. So he does a pretty good holiday every year with his family. And I was like, oh, I've got to interrupt him here. I felt awful. I felt so bad, and I was like, really sorry, but I cannot miss this opportunity. And understandably, he was like pretty annoyed, and I think it took him a little while to get over the fact, because it wasn't a personal thing with Darren, and I'll always feel bad for resigning, but I had to do it for a career move as well. And he later was just like, when he saw some of the content, he was like, I get it. Like, you're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you are here for. Sort of thing. And it's cool. But we're still friends. I just haven't seen him for a while. Yeah.
I remember through lockdown just how hard you guys were working. It was insane, wasn't it?
Man, lockdown was the one that broke the camel's back.
Okay.
Yeah. So because I can take a photo, I can use a video camera, I can edit, I got lights, I got all my own stuff, I got all that stuff anyway. I was basically the only one that, when lockdown happened and we were told, you got to be at home, you cannot come to the office, can't do any of these things. For me, it was business as usual. I just carried on putting out the same amount of content, just did it on my own. And at first, it was a challenge. It was like, how am I going to do this? I mean, you see my workshop, it's like, it's got everything, but it's pretty small. And to film in there is really difficult. There's no space to get depth or anything. Yeah. And I just saw it as a great challenge. And probably the first 6 months, I was like, this is amazing. And I went straight on to doing like branded work for brands. And I think I was one of the only people that just carried on like that. And I loved the challenge of it. And I was like, this is amazing. But then it takes its toll as well. Because it's like, it quickly became the new normal.
Okay,
and
that
working like that, it's not normal.
Well, weren't you, I think you told me you were setting alarms to make sure you were getting up at whatever time to make sure the uploads, Yeah,
because some of the uploads, because using consumer internet at home, when everyone in the world is working from home as well, the internet goes slow. I worked out the only way I could upload is overnight. And sometimes it would cut out and it'd be like, no, it has to go by the morning. Yeah, so getting up at crazy time to check and it'd be failed and I've got to put it on again. And
my God.
Just annoying things. And we tried every way of, sometimes you'd upload to Google Drive, sometimes it'd be a WeTransfer, just like every possible way of trying to do a workaround.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I see it as a really positive time because it was just such a weird time for everyone. And half the friends I know did nothing in lockdown. Yeah. Some of them live in flats, couldn't even go outside. Had a garden. Ate outside every day for the first year because of ridiculous weather. Rode my bike every day and just filmed. I was like, this is brilliant. But year two, it was like, oh.
But GMBN, it looked like it gave you a ton of opportunity in terms of you got to really sort of flex those nostalgia muscles. You did loads of cool projects, loads of retro builds, which everyone, I think, were just drooling over.
I love that stuff. I'm a storyteller. That's really what I love doing. Like I say, if I learn it, I'm like, God, did you know this? This is the coolest thing. I did loads of them. Did the Manitou project. I mean, that was later on actually. The love letter to Rock Sharks, delving all the way back to the past of Rock Sharks, and most of it's all tucked away. But then you start like checking on a few things. You're like, forgotten about that one. And then you go down a rabbit hole, and suddenly you've been like 2 days immersed in like back end of weird websites trying to just extract anything possible.
That encyclopedia of all bike knowledge. It is quite incredible.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the most fun stuff. But then also, I really got off on, I don't know, how to split a chain. Any maintenance mechanical video. For some reason, I just found it really easy to just, this is what you need, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
Watch this. Manufacturer will tell you need to do this. Quicker ways to do it this way. always try and give like fair, clear information.
Yeah.
And then seeing half these people, especially during lockdown, when people didn't have access to bike shops or anything, it just flew. The channel, and it was just like, it was accelerating faster than anything else in the business.
Yeah.
And that channel, I think, was a bit of an accidental success story. So I don't think anyone expected it to do as well as it did. And it almost, I mean, I don't know this and I couldn't say on numbers and stuff, but I'd say it impacted on GMBN because it was all under one umbrella to start with. Yeah. And the idea to move tech away to allow GMBN to be more lifestyle and tech to be obviously more focused on maintenance and the technical nature of stuff. I think because mountain bikers are quite nerdy with stuff. Yeah. I think it's fair to say. Yeah. In a nice way. Like, you're into your tech, you're into your oil weights and your...
Tom loves tubeless tyres, don't you?
Oh, I love tubeless tyres. Electronic suspension, tubeless tyres.
Yeah, we should probably change the subject. But I mean, it always, some of the stuff. Yeah, I must admit, I was so jealous of so much of that stuff. It was so cool, so good to see you as well. Clearly enjoying it.
Oh God, yeah, I loved it. I mean, I've said this to a million times to people. I'm like, what you see is what you get. There's no like hidden agenda. Pretty simple. It's like, I love bikes, I love beer, I love music. Yeah. That's basically it. I love a few things, but you know, there was no like smiling for count. I'm like, no, this is how it is.
Genuinely enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Do you sort of thrive off being at like the early point of something? Obviously, like Factory Jackson, that was the early days. Yeah. GMBN Tech, obviously, like from the start. Like, is that something you like?
Yeah, maybe. Like, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, maybe it was. You know, I mean, anything new is kind of exciting, whether it's just new to you or it's a new thing. So yeah, it's definitely super exciting, the unknown. And I think in this whole realm of, you know, what YouTube's becoming and changing, evolving into, to start with, there weren't any rules. There wasn't weird algorithms and stuff to try and work around. And, you know, it was not innocent, but, you know, the way of working of, like, we're going to put out a video every single day. I mean, it's wild. It's wild, and I can't big up like the crew behind the scenes enough for how that machine works, and it becomes addictive as well because you get into it. Yeah. You know, I think the way I would have always approached videos is like, well, we had like evergreen content, we had content that you've got to help people. I know if 12 speed when that came out, right? Let's do a 12 speed chain split video, and it's not a case of it's any different from 11 speed or a 10 speed. But people would be looking for a 12-speed chain split video because people don't know if it's any different.
Need to tick that box.
So suddenly it's like, how to split an 8-speed chain, a 9-speed chain, a 10-speed chain, 11-speed chain, 12-speed chain. And people are like, oh, you ever out of ideas? It's like, you're joking. Can't make enough. So it's literally just like, can't make enough videos. Yeah. And anyone who thinks the source of all of this stuff is drying up, it's not. Could go back there tomorrow and make 50 new videos like that, bang. Like I literally love that side of things. Yeah. You know, and actually, part of me, I wouldn't go back to that way of working. I feel like it's a chapter and it's cool and it's done and I'm super proud of it. But it's like I also probably made up to 1,000 videos. You know, and there's always stuff that was never aired and stuff. But you know, in the time I was there for 6 years, you think like to start with 3 videos a week, then we're doing 4 videos and sometimes other channels as well. Yeah, it's like it soon kind of adds up. You look at it and you're like, that's quite a few videos. Yeah, and I just feel like I've kind of done it. Yeah, like it's not done, but I feel like but I still like telling stories. I think that's why I've done a few nerdy videos on my own YouTube channel. Yeah, it's like there's no hidden agenda. I'm not like trying to beat the algorithm. It's like if I feel like I've got something to say, I'll make a video. Yeah, I haven't made one for a month because.
How do you feel? I guess like one of the things I noticed is just the nature of it and the timing maybe really elevated you as journalists, as characters. And you know, when you meet, you know, you guys out in the trails, you see Donny, whoever, swarmed by people.
Yeah, I mean the reach is mind blowing, and it dawns on you way more when you're overseas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, especially the US, which was like the weirdest thing. So I think the first time I did like a sea otter or something like that, you know, been there many times before, and journalists guys, but you go to sea otter, and because it's an American audience out there, Americans generally a bit more flamboyant and in your face. Yo, like straight up, and you're reserved in English, and you're like, wow, like people really like YouTube here, don't they? And everyone would tell you, and you're like, and they'd always be like, thanks, like you helped me fix my bike, or thanks, I fixed my daughter's bike that, you know, we didn't have the money to go and do it ourselves. And like repeatedly, it's people saying thanks, and it's like, whoa.
So that's nice. Yeah, I guess
and
there's
the same. Like I said, I've always liked to share stuff. So
yeah.
When I first joined GMBN, I knew that there would be the tech channel later because that's what I discussed with Simon. But when I was basically just on GMBN for a while, and I felt like a fifth wheel. I didn't feel like I belonged there. Because you got Martin, you got Blake, Mr. Infectious Personality with all the skills in the world, you know, super great dude. You had Neil on there. It's like, and I didn't really have a home. I knew kind of what was going to happen, but I'm like, I've got nothing to offer with you guys.
Yeah.
And then I was really worried about what was going to happen with that tech channel. When I did the first weekly show, in fact, the plan wasn't even to have a weekly show to start with. And I think, I forget the timing, but I seem to remember we were just about to break up for Christmas. And Simon changed his mind about when he wanted the channel to launch. And then he was like, I've changed my mind, we're going to launch on this date, and also EMBN on the same date, and GMBN Tech on the same date. I think everyone just before Christmas was like, whoa. And he was like, oh yeah, and you're all going to have a weekly show as well. Because we all kind of thought like there would be the Dirt Shed show and there would be some tech going on there. And some E going on there and all that sort of stuff. He's like, no, we're all going to have separate ones. Which now makes perfect sense. But at the time it was like, because I've got to do one of those on my own. And it's got to have all these different elements and layers in it. And he's like, yep. And then the first time I did it, I was like, oh my God, I can talk about bikes for half an hour. This is easy.
But I guess there's a lot of overlap from what you were like curating on the mag and stuff, right?
Yeah. I literally, so that's when I kind of realised, right, I got this.
I can do this.
This is fine. So if you ask me to do bunny up competition with Blake, forget it. Ask me about T47 bot brackets, right, here we go.
I don't know, he's pretty handy at bunny hops.
Yeah.
We used to call him Captain Car Park.
Beat him in the bunny up competition once.
Captain Car Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just found it, whether my brain works differently, but generally if I've processed a bit of information, that's it, it's in there then. I can remember it and then just recite it, and just found it quite easy, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And then I started by heavily scripting, and then my method was always, as I script, as I'm writing it, I'm just acknowledging it into my head, and I'll never use the script again.
Yeah.
I'll have a read of it before I present, and then I would be like, cool, we got it.
Yeah.
And then but the more you do it, the better you get. And I was filming at such a rate. You'd go in, be like, half hour show, bang, right, let's do that maintenance video. Right, okay, we'll do a browner video this afternoon, and we'll do one more, and then we're going, cool. And I just found it easy. Like, not saying it wasn't stressful or the pace or anything, but filming, I was like, this is amazing. I felt literally, I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It was, I think the only time up to date I had, even though everything I'd done, I loved doing. But yeah, the filming stuff, and I used to get off on it as well. Like, literally just like, find out, you know, the viewers are like, oh my God, you've legitimately helped me. You know, I'd always go to my bike shop for some jobs, but I haven't got the money to go for every job. So I've now bought some tools, and
that's really cool.
We learned to not buy cheap tools. We learned to wait and buy better tools that would last. And you know, any small pocket of information
you could give out. Yeah.
And then it just meant that every time I was thinking of something, you're thinking of what's going to be useful for people.
Yeah.
What do people want? What do they need? You know, what's actually useful.
So after, was it 5 or 6 years?
6 years.
6 years. How hard was it to move away if that's what you felt you were really comfortable with?
Because I think it's fair to say I was pretty burnt out.
Okay.
Really came to a point where I was just not functioning very well. You know, just a repetitiveness of just so much stuff. And I don't mean it in a bad way because there's so much stuff to make. But what I know is I can't work at that rate now indefinitely.
Yeah.
There comes a point where your body and your mind are a bit like,
nope.
You should probably have a break.
Yeah.
And I had some time off work, wasn't doing very well. Okay. And just realised basically like, I need to go and do something else because I was starting to make things and not enjoy it.
Okay.
And I didn't realise that for quite a while. And Steph was like, you're not yourself.
Okay.
I never really got what she was saying.
Yeah.
But I was like stressy, on edge, snappy, coming off camera, being like this, and come off camera and being like, I feel tired. It's like that's just not who I am.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not what I was all about. I just thought, hold on a second. So I just did some thinking, rode some bikes, went walking, spent a lot of time taking photos, trying to just not do the daily grind sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, actually, I have no idea what I'm going to do now, but I want to do something else.
Yeah.
And it's obviously got to be bikes. And Steph was like, well, you know everyone, all these different brands and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to work for all these people. Like, I like all this stuff, but she's like, who would you work for if you work for anyone tomorrow? And I'd be like, well, SRAM or Shimano maybe, if it was like a parts company. She goes, well, what about bikes? I was like, oh, probably not, probably not Mondraker, because I've ridden them for ages. She goes, there you go, speak to them. And I was literally just like thinking about it, and I'm like, well, yeah, actually, because that bike is where it all started.
Yeah.
With you and me.
Yeah.
That. And since then, so that was 2013 and 2014 model.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably had 10 or 11 of their bikes by choice, which I've kind of always loved their bikes, always loved the people at the brand, but not really like instinctively, just kind of, well, that fits, that works for me, I'll get one. And then when I was at Factory Jackson, I could have had Yetis, like Rocky Mans, any number of things. I was like, XL Foxy, done, perfect. And I've always just gravitated towards them. Had a great relationship with Miguel, the CEO, Israel from a journalistic background, and then the product team. And it just, I was like, well, actually, this is the one. But then I spoke to Richie to start with.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I kind of want a career change. I think I want to go into the industry, but I don't really know how to do it. And he's like, are you reading my emails? He goes, we're doing some new projects. We need to speak. Yeah, I'll ring you back. And then I think I was like literally on the roof doing the gutters.
Yeah.
He rang me back, and basically I had an hour-long conversation with him on the roof. And he goes, yeah, what do you reckon? Have a chat. And so I got on a plane, just went over there. It was easier. And then I had a chat with my now boss, Yuri. And he told me about things that they wanted to do, like expand into the US market and the intention to have a factory racing team and just like all these different things. And it was just at a point where things were getting difficult in the industry. Yeah. And it was like, some people when I left GMBN, they were like, you really want to move somewhere now? And I was like, yeah, I need something new, and I want to go to a brand that I believe in. Like, it's never been an easier step into something. Yeah. But now I'm in a world where it's the same but different. Like working with bikes, working with people I know about things I know about, but it's just so monumentally different.
In what ways? Oh, sorry.
I don't know.
So it's all about bike production.
Okay.
So I might be talking about tech on the bikes, but I'm talking about the tech that's on our bikes, not that's on everyone else's bikes. We're building relationships with the companies we work with. And I'll say relationships because we've had these relationships with SRAM and Shimano and all these companies for years. But it's different now because now these relationships that the brand has rather than who I have, they're not media relationships. These are brands like, hey, we want to buy 50,000 of these from you. So you could think that it's a transactional relationship. It's actually not. So this is the coolest thing because the brand only picks stuff that they want to use and what they do it their own way. Even if it's sometimes a bit of a difficult thing to do, they choose to do it from what they want. And so I'm now, instead of going to media launches and looking at other people's new products, I'm now the person teaching media about the new product, which from my perspective is great. And again, other than the fact I don't like talking in public, it's part of my job. Yeah. Give me a little black box to talk to, no problem, all day long. But a room full of people that want to judge and ask questions, it's just like, oh, not sure about this. But it turns out, my remit for those was to do product presentations with no slideshow. Okay. So my boss here is like, no, you're the stage with the product. That's it. And he goes, involve the product team. And he goes, you know the questions that all the journalists are going to want to ask. And he goes, you need to give them the answers so they don't have any questions. And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah. And the first one didn't work that well because my flight was delayed and just a number of things. And I basically ended up, this was in Portugal for the June launch. And everyone was in there, and everyone obviously had a few beers because other people's flights were delayed, and I more or less had to get off the plane, walk straight into the room, do a presentation. Oh my God. No, and I kind of knew what I was doing, but it was still a bit flustered and not ready for it. But the Crafty launch we did in Finale was decent. It was really good because we had Stefan Schlee from Bosch there, and we had all our product team, industrial designers and product testers, and it was basically like a live Q&A. So nice. I presented. I didn't go too deep, but present the major information on the bike, the geometry, the flip chips, all those sorts of features. Yeah. And then I'll be like, right, let's talk about the spec on the bikes, let's talk about the price points, let's talk about the weights, let's talk about the geometry, just all the stuff. And then when the floor opened for questions at the end, I think like Danny Milner from MBR had a question.
Of course, yeah.
I think maybe Rob Rides and maybe one other did, but
Maldon rang in.
There wasn't much, but it was really cool because it became an interactive thing.
Yeah,
and it was super cool because of the way that I work. I've got most things in the back of my head anyway.
Yeah,
and I had an answer for everything.
Nice.
And if I didn't immediately have all of the information, Israel's over there, and Israel knows any number more than any other human. So it's mad what he can remember. And it feels like it's a really good thing. So now we're like building on that, and it's the same but different, you know. So I'll go and ride with the media rather than be with the media riding with the product teams and stuff.
I wanted to go right back to your relationship with Mondraker because you have been sort of almost synonymous with them for quite a few years.
Yeah.
You know, when was it sort of when forward geometry first came out that you first started loving them? Was it before then, or because obviously forward geometry for a tall guy, you know, obviously Seb, who now works for Pink Bike but was working for us for a long time, was another guy who sort of like, so I've got bikes that fit. Like, was that the sort of the genesis of it?
Exactly that. Yeah. So I think just before it, you had a Dune that was pre-forward geometry.
Yeah, maybe.
And I remember liking the look of the bike, but it was too small, so I didn't pay any attention to it. And you went out and did a feature with Fabian with the prototype.
Yeah, 2011.
And you were like,
2011.
you need to look at this. Like, this is right up your street sort of thing. And I looked at it and I was like, I'm sure it's all right. But at this point, I was riding a Ibis Mojo HD XL, and the reach on it is, I think it's about 412, which sounds crazy.
It's not.
Yeah.
You serious?
It was respective of an 80mm stem as standard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's wild, isn't it? So if you look back at these numbers.
2012? 2011, 2012?
About 2012, I'd say, yeah. So 26-inch wheel.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some other numbers I could quote that'll make you laugh about things as well.
God.
But yeah, so I was riding that, and then I got that frame sent through, and that was, so I only did two sizes, medium and large, and the medium had a 480 reach, and the large 500 reach.
Back then?
Yeah, but that was with a 10mm stem.
With that stem.
Yeah,
so
that was the standard stem at the time.
So, and the first ride I went on that, I got a pinch punch on a front wheel, which I'd never had before, and I was a bit like, oh, that's weird. Didn't think anything of it. I was like, suspension feels awful. Like, and I realised I had to basically recalibrate everything the way I rode, and I was riding into stuff harder, and I was literally like, this is like mind blowing how good this is. And obviously, the entire industry universally has incrementally got there. But I've said this pre-Mondraker, and I'll forever say it, for any bike brand to make a decision that ballsy and do it on a production bike. So the XR was the model that had full geometry. And
only on the Foxy.
June Factor 120mm bike with full geometry. Like crazy.
But do you remember originally when I saw it in prototype form, it was called Centre Stem. That's what they wanted to call it. I looked back at the article I wrote for Bike Radar and I searched forward geometry and I was like, can only find the reviews we've done.
Yeah.
And then I remembered, they called it that. And I was like, oh, thank God they changed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, essentially they took the stem back to 10mm and then put the 60mm on the front end. Is basically how it translates. So your cockpit position's the same per size, but your front centre's massive. And when the penny really dropped for me was getting back on the Mojo, which I loved, and it was a great bike, and I almost couldn't ride it because it felt like suddenly, the wheels are really close together, and I'm like an isosceles triangle. So my head was all the way up here, and the wheels are close. So whatever I'm doing, climbing or descending, I'm moving my weight all the time to keep balance. Whereas on that, my weight was more or less in the middle most of the time. Suddenly I've got equal traction, could ride up stuff without the front wheel coming off the ground, could ride down stuff like it was a mini downhill bike. I was like, that's it. And to the point I almost had to stop riding it on a mag because everything else was so much like shorter with longer stems. It became difficult. Yeah. It was a bit of a problem. But in my head I was like, that's it. Like that's the way. So it's always been there. And I think I was because of that bike, I was always looking for long bikes. And I don't know if you remember, but one of the other cool projects which I've forgotten to tell you about was Jeff Stieber with Intense.
Yes, that was well cool.
So he was like, hey, why don't you come over and we'll see how we can build a bike? And I was like, could I pick the geometry of the bike? And he was like, yeah, sure. And I could feel his sort of
things
talk on the call. He was just like, why would you pick the geometry? Like, I'm the one that makes the bikes around here. And I was like, I basically gave him the numbers off a sheet. of that. I was like, this is what we're going to build. And he was like, okay, pretty strange geometry. Rang up Israel, got him to send me a stem, and went over there to Temecula. And he's like, literally didn't have tubing long enough to build it. So the top tube wasn't even a bike top tube. I say it wasn't. I've still got it in my loft. I don't even know what it's from. It's a really weird shaped tube. The down tube was off a Socom downhill bike for Chris Cavara that never got made. So that was like a one piece. It was hydroformed and it was really long. And he goes, we can get close to it. We can't quite get it. So it's a little bit shorter, but still, it was close. And then he made that for me. Rode it on the 951 trails in Temecula, which again was another
tick.
951 trails.
It's got custom intents. I mean, it's like that's like we were talking about getting custom Troy Lee lids earlier, and I mean that absolutely just
that trip from the nerdy front was my last major trip I did with MBUK, and it was probably one of the best trips I've done anywhere in or out of work. So it was me and Steve Bear. Flew into LA. We went to Temecula first. Did the bike project, built the bike, rode it on the 951 trails. Then we drove to Laguna and went riding with Hans Ray, went to his house. And even Hans, he was shocked how easily I could ride down stuff and do stoppies on that. Because I was like, this is easy. And you can see he was like, what does he know that I don't know? And I'm like, you've got a tiller on your bike and I've got a proper stem.
Yeah.
Here's the difference. And then went riding with Brian Lopes as well, went to Sheep Hills and like literally ticks off all of these things. It was just wild. Then we went up through Santa Barbara and went up to Sea Otter. And then Intense at the time, I forget the model of bike. It was a carbon, might have been a Tracer 275. Let's just say it was that one. They were launching a carbon bike that year at Sea Otter, and they had loads of them. They had black and white ones and red and black ones on their stand.
Yeah.
And my alloy freak bike that was on there got more attention, and I feel like there was a bit of... They didn't like it, and they hid it out the back, and after a while they asked me to move it. And I went to see Stickman over at Intense, over at Troy Lee, lent it up, and then Robin Schmidt from, I forgot his Enduromag was like, what's this? And I was like, oh, it's my custom bike. He's like, you got a custom Intense? I was like, yeah. He was like, I'll take some pictures. And he took some pictures, and as soon as he started taking pictures, so I think some German journalists walked past, they're like, what's that? They started taking pictures, and I'm like, if I was taking pictures of this bike that doesn't exist, I was like, this is super cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, I only ever rode it a few times back in the UK, ironically, because I was just never a fan of the early VPP.
Right.
So much later, VPP got really good, but the early stuff had like, the real extended lower link. So it had a real distinct thing that it did in the suspension curve. If you were like, I don't know, like going through a bomb hole and you hit like a big hole, if you're like halfway through the travel, it would feel like the bike stalls slightly. Like I can't describe it better than that. It's so distinct to those early ones. But I mean, the bike looks so sick. It's raw. Like, it's amazing.
Did you see it?
I knew of it. So, because I would have been around at that point.
Yeah.
Again, like, I think I was on curly bars and just...
It was very cool.
I've got it exactly as I last rode it.
Okay.
With flat tyres and brakes that need bleeding. But same as that. It was sat next to it in the loft, like, ready to use. So again, I'm going to get it out again at some point. So
I guess Mondraker definitely very much at the pointy end of things in terms of development. What's next? Can you give us any sort of sneak
bike
peeks?
Development stuff?
Yeah. What is there anything they're working on you're allowed to talk about? Or?
Oh, definitely not, unfortunately.
And do you get involved with that stuff?
Yeah. So last week on our presentation week, I was riding a prototype, which was just super cool.
Okay.
Annoyingly, because of things like Brexit, it's not stuff that... So if an e-bike gets sent over, it can't go back, for example. So that's causing problems. And also just import and export stuff. So if there's prototypes sent over, it would be easier for me to put it in a van and drive back than it would be to get it back out. So I go over there, which is no big problem. But I would like to be riding that stuff on home turf more because it can provide a different perspective. And we're working on a test program to do stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's so I got to ride a bike that doesn't yet exist. It hasn't got a name currently on paper, and everyone that was there was internal working for the company, so it's all right. But it had some parts on it that also don't exist yet.
I mean, I know we get to do a little bit of that stuff, but that must be the dream.
Well, this is the irony. So I've spent my whole working career telling people about stuff, and now I'm working on a page. I'm like, oh my god, I want to tell people about it, but I can't. And it's like,
Not publicly, at least.
no, not publicly.
But that's got to be.
Not when
the
that little
truth,
red light's on.
Yeah, right. Turn it off.
But no, it's super cool. And actually, that whole test program, like, it's so my job role falls within like the marketing team.
Yeah.
But also, I don't really cast myself as someone in marketing because I'm really close to product. Like, because those guys they would be my major contacts in Mondraker from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm always chatting to them about stuff. You know, I want to go and ride with Louise and Salva and just chat about bikes and see what they're running on their bikes. Because every time I go over there, they've all got different things. And, you know, obviously they get everyone else's bikes and different motors and different just stuff.
Yep.
Constantly. I'm like, I want in. So, I mean, from my perspective, that's where I want to go.
Okay.
Towards that side of things, because it's super interesting, and I definitely feel there's stuff I can bring with that. But sorry, I went off on a tangent then.
No, it's all good. No, totally.
So, I can't talk about stuff, which just obviously makes me want to talk about it even more.
It's really good to hear. I'm so pleased that it's worked out, and you are obviously, you know, it's something you feel so passionately about.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do it, you've got to full on and not bother, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, a part of me still has an urge to. I do miss part of, like, I don't miss the process, because it's like, in hindsight now, with the different way of working, I'm not sure I could reintegrate back into that way of working anyway.
Okay.
Because my mindset's changing to the way that we think on bike production schedule and launch campaigns, and it's just so much more than I realised.
Okay.
And, you know, it's taken me a year. I was saying to Tom just before we started filming, people say it takes 6 months to change job. It's going to take me a lot longer, probably 18 months, I reckon. Maybe even longer, because I almost feel I've been institutionalised, not in a negative way, by basically just being in publishing and media side for so long that I've got to take that head off to be able to put the other one on. And it's super cool, but I'm still like, I want to tell people about this, and I want to do this. I can't do that. But really, like, with what my job role entails, part of it is producing YouTube content. And so far it's been a bit of a strange year, because we, unlike many brands at the moment, because we're an independent, we've been carrying on with launches and doing stuff. So there's been, like, this year's been crazy. The amount of different bike launches back to back and media camps and stuff, that's been my focus more than making content, really. And the content we made's been about the bikes and technology, but for me there's just far more stuff to make.
Okay.
Because there's all these brands that Bosch is a perfect example. So Bosch is a relationship. It's not a customer. It's not anything else. So when they first made their first e-bike, which was a Vantage, like a hardtail, firstly Miguel didn't want to build e-bikes. Yeah, he was like, bikes and engines, we don't need these sorts of things. Obviously, Roadbomb was like, get it. But we were too small as a brand to fulfil the orders required by Bosch.
Right.
And they were like, we can't do business. We like you guys, but it doesn't work like that. But then our product team, because they work differently, I mean, everyone will say that about every brand and stuff. But what I mean by that is, like, they don't think about things in quite the same way. They think about how to improve things. And it's not like saying, oh, this brake could be better if you change this. That's not really what I mean. So the original Bosch software had 4 modes and they weren't dynamic. And Salva and the guys like, if you had a dynamic mode, the rider input would directly affect the motor output. And they were like, we need to help, like, let's work together, because a dynamic mode will change everything. And then that mode basically went on to be EMTB. And that was our guys with the Bosch engineers.
Oh, no way.
But obviously it wasn't for us, it was
for everyone,
a Bosch thing for everyone to use, but it was our guys that worked with it. And I love the fact that that's the sort of relationship we have. That's why I say it's a relationship. So they basically sweet talk Bosch into working with them by saying, no, this is like, we're not buying your product. We want to work with you to make this thing better. And that's like, for us, but it's obviously for you and your other customers. And that's basically just how they do business.
Wicked.
So, and it's the same with all the relationships we have.
Yeah.
And for me, knowing that that's how we work, I'm like, well, this is brilliant. It's super good.
So that's where you potentially see yourself going.
Yeah, I think so.
Very cool.
You know, there's lots of, I want to stop saying the relationship word. There's lots of industry mates that we work with.
Nice.
That I only get to go and see and make content with, and you know, it's about industry is about people, not just a product.
Yep.
We're obviously a bike company. I don't need to talk about that. It's there. You know, I want to talk about the people that make the stuff and
Yeah.
the more interesting things, I think.
Very cool.
So there's lots of places to go with this stuff, I think.
Wicked. Well, I think we should probably wrap up now.
We should, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
No worries.
It's been an absolute pleasure. So nice to have you back under the MBUK roof. Obviously, it's a bit different nowadays.
That's why I brought that with me, just because I think it's,
Bit nostalgic.
it's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I left MBUK, obviously I still had that bike.
Yeah.
I said to Israel, I was like, cold dead hands, mate. You ain't having that one back. So a lot of stuff goes back. I was like, that's
staying.
last day. And then the fact it's still got more or less the gear on when I left.
Yeah.
Well.
He bled the brakes as well. They feel good. Yeah. Anyway, right.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, make sure you stay tuned for more MBUK podcasts and all the other exciting videos we're going to be doing in the near future. Like, subscribe, do all of that stuff as well. Thank you and see you later.